So as far as like testimonial stuff goes, yeah, I'd love to hear about your experience working together and like things that you got from it, ways that you felt like you grew from it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, uh, for me, it's like, it was kind of the serendipitous timing of I was kind of switching gears to get back involved in music and specifically playing guitar a lot more when we cross paths, which is funny and just like life tends to work out this way. And it was um, immensely helpful for me, especially like I've been playing for a long time, but there's like always room for fundamentals. And it's like the more you get your fundamentals rock solid and from different perspectives, like it just like trickles out and makes everything a lot easier. So, particularly for me, like especially joining a band as a second guitarist alongside a, another guitarist who's extremely good.
Yeah.
Um, so who could totally like hold his own soloing and doing everything. So it's like, you know, I'd like to consider myself pretty competent, but he's like, probably even more sharp than I am. But then it's like, oh, where do you fit in as a second guitarist? And I mean, just generally getting back up to speed, the review on scales, and especially your perspective on scales, very centered around like the root note and connecting the shapes together. Where before I was playing very like boxed patterns, and I was able to kind of jump across patterns and connect them together much more fluidly was really big. Um, but honestly, like the biggest thing was like I had never really buckled down on triads a lot. And then our work, especially like the extra one-on-one work on just like hammering down on the triads was huge. Cause like again, like being the second guitarist in a band, like that gave me a really clear avenue to kind of layer in to what we're playing in a way that's not overlapping. Because we were both kind of familiar. It's like, oh, but like the bottom four strings, like you really kind of know where the chords are. But to be able to like really quickly grab stuff on like the top four strings and like kind of play over the chords like triad style has been like to be able to do that really easily and fluidly was like really huge. Especially, yeah, like just trying to think of creative, like filling in space that isn't already occupied in the context of a whole band. Like that, like the triads thing is huge. Like even though I've been playing for like 10 years, like that, like suddenly made it like very turnkey to kind of like pick parts out. So that was probably like my biggest thing. Like personally, very specifically. Um, but yeah, I mean, again, like especially in my scenario, just like being able to buckle down on the fundamentals in kind of like a new perspective that's like very geared towards being able to improvise and be fluid around the neck is like immensely helpful. So
Cool. Yeah, that's really good
um,
to hear. And then I'd love to hear, in the time since we were working together, like more intensively, have there been specific situations where this stuff has showed up and really helped you?
um, I mean, like that was one specific situation, like being able to like write sort of like co-lead parts, um, like on the upper set of strings is just like
Totally.
key second guitar rock band material, just like
Totally.
amazingly helpful. And I like getting really hip on the modes again and the oral skills has one been helpful because I'm jumping in on harmonies and like
Mhm.
vocally, so just being able
Oh,
to pick
cool.
those out, kind of a tangent.
Yeah, yeah.
But because it's like kind of like a funk rock group, being able to pick out when like orally, when it's like there's not like that many scenarios, but it's like one out of every 8 to 10 times, it's going to be like a mixolydian situation when you're
Yeah,
in
yeah.
kind of like a funk type group.
Yeah.
And being able to be like, that's it's a flat seventh kind of day today, like based on what chords are
Yeah,
going
yeah.
on, just immediately and be like, I got that. And then it's
Yeah.
like, it, really makes it sound like you're like keyed in and listening to what's going on versus just like hammering it with like pentatonic more. Not that there's anything wrong with that. And again, it's like in a rock group, that's like oftentimes you don't want to step out of that too much because then it sounds kind of weird. But especially like in a funk context, to be able to be like, yep, like flat seventh, like I really got to hit that because like we're in this very like dominant situation, like funky situation, um, when it's getting kind of jammy, um, is really big. So that's like another specific context thing is that I feel like with my ears, like really able to pick that out in the context of what we're playing. Um, and I don't know, like, do you need any more? Those are kind of like my big, like two things, like very
Yeah, yeah.
concrete.
Yeah, this is
Um,
great. This is super helpful.
yeah.
Yeah. Another question that I've been asking people is that like, in joining like create interesting music, there's like a little bit of a leap, like it's deciding to become a part of something. Yeah, and so for somebody who's thinking about doing that, or they're on the fence and they're interested, but maybe they're just like nervous about kind of jumping in, taking the leap in, like what might you say to somebody who's in that situation?
Who's on the fence about hopping in for structured learning at all, or specifically like this? Um, yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
like I'll just keep going. Like,
yeah, sure.
for me, I mean, the general structure of the lesson material and the planned lesson stuff is very strong and well presented, so that it's immediately useful and presentable. Like the format, like everybody teaches scales, but just like I think the way that you presented that is a good like piece of evidence on how it's like very application centered. Like you're like always thinking about the root note, and that's like kind of how you chose to present the patterns was really nice. And then on top of that, even though recently I've been kind of busy and haven't been able to jump on them, the group calls are really nice. Um, because I mean, it's good to ask questions, but it's really even more interesting to hear what questions other people have.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed just listening in on the discussions you were having with other students who, like, music wise, are doing completely different um, stuff than I was like in my specific like setting. I was kind of like trying to learn tunes and get my improvisation down. And then we'd be like sitting on a call with someone who's like really in it on like writing their own music and kind of like that angle of creativity, and being able to hear what kind of questions they have and where they are in their process, and their background is like really helpful for context and also just like picking up inspiration on like what you might want to do for your next thing or any of that. So I like that a lot.
Yeah, that's good to
Yeah.
hear. Yeah, and then I guess I'm wondering, like, would you say that there's anything in particular about me as a teacher, whether it's like the things that I choose to communicate, which you've already touched on a little bit, or like the ways in which I communicate, the ways in which I meet students where they're at that were particularly helpful for you?
Um, I mean, I think the like uh the general approach of not like you need to have like the encyclopedic knowledge of like every single scale and how they relate to each other and everything, um, is how to absorb like the information. I kind of felt like the approach was more like here is how you start engaging in a process so that the information that you need is like quickly accessible in your brain. It's like here is how you just like as a musician grow to accumulate these things, not just so you know them, but that you can like draw upon them very quickly. Like the like metronome, like structured improvisation stuff. And it's just like it's not a process of like knowing things, it's a process of like integrating them into yourself and just like you hopping aboard the process to like slowly learn them over time. You know, it's not presented as like once you know these 10 things, like you're set. It's like, well, here's how you get aboard the process to just like take these things. And it's like if you want to learn a new thing that's not covered like in the class, it's like the process is presented that like, oh, like it's obvious to me how I would like incorporate this into my practice if I wanted to like get into the process of just having it as something that I can like reach upon easily. And however I'm like creating or performing music. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, well, that's great to hear. Yeah, I'm feeling good about this. Is there anything else that you feel like compelled to share?
I don't know. We kind of like covered all
Word.
of it, other
Yeah,
than
yeah.
definitely hop on board. It's a great experience, and I got a lot from it. Dear listener or reader who is, you know, reading whatever excerpts may be pulled from this or not.
Yeah, totally.
So, but yeah, I mean, I had a great experience. I'm hoping to be able to like hop back on the structured individual practice routine very soon as the craziness of live performing settles a little bit in my
Yeah,
life. But
totally.
um, yeah, of
Yeah. Awesome. Well, yeah. Thanks so much for this. Yeah, and it's great to see you.
course. Yeah, likewise.
Awesome. All right.